This video is sponsored by Skillshare.
Hello, darling magic makers. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me for this one. Today, I am making a video for those who know that they have gone over budget before on their spiritual spending. If you know that you have ever dropped one too many coins on witchy supplies, material objects for your witchy path to enhance your practice, you've come to the right place. This video is for you. We're going to get into questioning why that tends to happen and looking at what we can do to reverse some of those negative impacts that come from purchasing too many damn material objects for our path.
Get in, loser. We're going shopping.
I'm talking specifically to the witches amongst you, and yes, I have been one of you at various times in my practice who have purchased new witchy books, knowing full well that there are witchy books left unread, sitting, gathering dust on your shelves, who have purchased brand new tarot decks, knowing fully that you have tarot decks you've completely forgotten about, that you haven't played with for ages, or maybe not even since you bought them. I'm talking about witches that know that they can fall into the habit of overconsumption. I'm interested in finding out what kinds of journeys you guys have been on with witchy materialism in your own life and what you have done to kind of avoid that, or if you're going through something like that now. I will admit that this video was born out of a place of frustration for me and feeling a little bit sick, because the last few days when I've been going on Instagram and TikTok and stuff, I've been checking out socials. I obviously follow a lot of witchy accounts and a lot of witchcraft adjacent stuff. There has just been a lot of material objects everywhere. And every so often I notice this, that I'm not really getting deep information about the craft. More what I'm getting are like perfectly curated altars, absolute metric shit tons of crystals, you know, and candles and decks and books and just beautiful aesthetic arrangements of things with the soft light and the soft life aesthetic. And don't get me wrong, I like a bit of stuff, and I do appreciate the aesthetic value of carefully curated collections of stuff. But this video was born out of a frustration of witnessing that also I appreciate what happens to the human brain when we see things perpetually on socials. And I started to think about what this does to my brain and what this does to the brains of other practitioners when the stuff is very much the focus and it just looks beautiful and riveting and aspirational in nature. And just thinking about how that has contributed over the years to some of the things that I've purchased and to some of the insecurities I've had over time about how my witchcraft ought to look. What does heavily materialistic content and aspirational aesthetic content do to us as practitioners? And is it possible that owning more stuff gets in the way of us experiencing more stuff? Let's talk about it. Let's do this. This morning, I sat around in my pajamas and I thought about the various different types of witchy overconsumerism that I've experienced, that I know that my audience and clients and friends have experienced. And I have created 6 categories of unsatisfied witchy shopper, okay? And I would like you to see if you can identify yourself in any of these categories, if you're currently in any of these categories now, or perhaps most magically of all, if maybe you were formerly in one of these categories, but you've figured out the escape route. You no longer do this. You have healed from that form of materialism and overconsumption. Okay, so here are my notes, all right? So the first type is a vibe shopper. Okay. And what I wrote about this is that you are principally shopping for a feeling, and you imagine that the witchy purchase will create that feeling and that the feeling will be lasting and real only once that object is in your possession. You might not necessarily be thinking this super consciously, but it's this sort of desire to have an object that will then put all of the different pieces into place in your witchcraft practice. It will clarify it, it will purify it, it will intensify it, it will make it more exciting, it will make it more serious. Whatever it is, the vibe that you're going for. And sometimes it can just be purely an aesthetic vibe. Like maybe you want a change up in the aesthetics in your practice. And so you kind of lean into buying things that complement the new aesthetic that therein kind of says something about who you are becoming as a witch. So it's really vibe shopping. That's basically it. It's shopping for a vibe. It's shopping for a certain kind of feeling and kind of like linking your hope for that and your desire for that into specific objects or decks or books or candles or crystals or whatever it is. And I've written here that you might tell yourself that you will give more time or energy to your practice once you've made the purchase, that it will inspire you to go to your altar more, or that you will somehow like morph or transform into a new, fresher, sort of more clever or more engaged version of yourself as a witch once you have purchased the product. So the product, the physical object, is not just going to do the job in and of itself that it was designed to do. It's going to do something way deeper for you. This particular type is linked to the second type that I identified, which is the dopamine shopper. A dopamine shopper buys things for the dopamine hit and then lives out the emotional come down later on when the object that is purchased has not provided them with a deeper sense of drive and meaning after all. And a dopamine shopper is probably not someone who just does this with witchy supplies, but actually does this across the board with everything, with other areas of your life as well, with other hobbies and commitments, etc., that you have, and things that you sort of like need objects for sometimes, but often end up buying objects that you do not need to kind of fulfill that sort of dopamine that you desire, right? I've put here, do you love the feeling of waiting for a witchy package to arrive or bringing a full shopping bag back home from your local witchy store, only to find that you cast the stuff aside pretty quickly and move on to something else? A dopamine shopper is someone who gets a hit from the shopping and then they get a hit from the receiving, but they are really, really struggling to get any kind of hit, to feel that anything is hitting once they've acquired it. I have had several problems in my life at various stages before with being a dopamine shopper. I definitely have a weird relationship with dopamine in general, and it's something that I have discussed in my therapy, and I'm very pleased with the progress that I've made on that score. But definitely it can creep into witchy materialism and witchy consumption of objects. And so I wanted to really link those two things. So it's vibe shopping for the aesthetic, for the feeling, for the idea, for the concept of how it's going to make you feel afterwards. And then also the dopamine shopping. I think dopamine shopping is more like the shopping and the receiving just feel so good. Whether or not you're even going to get out of the gate with using the object, very often you won't do. And so that's something that also could have deeper emotional wounds attached to it, and it can be linked to much deeper things. And if you want me to go into this in another video, I'd be happy to do so, because I've discovered a lot about my own attachment wounds related to overbuying and the desire to own more of certain things. Number 3, are you a slump shopper with your witchcraft practice? Slump shoppers buy things to pull themselves out of a stale period in their witchcraft. They tell themselves that a purchase of something would symbolize a renewed commitment to whatever that object has represented to them. So for instance, if you haven't picked up a tarot deck in a while, you might convince yourself that you need a new one in order to encourage you to pick up your learning of tarot again. You know, anything where you've kind of backslid on your commitments to learning or progressing or deepening in your practice can be almost somehow like healed by the notion that, well, if I buy this, it renews the commitment. If I buy this, it is symbolic of the fact that I am willing to now pull myself up out of my slump. I've had enough of the slump, and the object and the purchasing of the object symbolizes that this is the end of the slump era and I'm kind of emerging out of the slump. Darlings, this video is sponsored by Skillshare, the wonderful online learning platform offering courses to help you with hobbies, business goals, and self-development, with everything from illustration, music, and cooking to managing your time and building a strong social media presence. You can learn at your own pace and even submit projects to teachers for feedback, which is useful for knowing you're on the right track. Try out Ali Abdaal's Productivity Masterclass. He has a very popular YouTube channel. He's a doctor and entrepreneur who teaches productivity in a truly accessible way, so you can find out what you're getting wrong about productivity, how to bust through your blocks with getting things done, learn about the power of habits, and learn about things like Parkinson's law, the Pareto principle, and Newton's first law of motion as tools for task completion. If you're one of the first 500 people to use the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen, you'll receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So get started today. Thank you, Skillshare, for sponsoring. Let's get back to it. Number 4, are you a Magpie shopper? And you know what this is going to be already without me having to elaborate, right? So basically, Magpie shoppers are just taken in by shinies a lot of the time. They do like pretty objects that make them feel uplifted, however temporarily. They do like to elevate their surroundings, you know? They are literally like a magpie with a shiny silver milk bottle top. It's that kind of vibe. I've put here, do shiny objects provide you with a feeling of spiritual elevation on a temporary basis, but then you need another shiny object? Do things lose their sparkle quite quickly for you? And Magpie shoppers, I'm not just saying that you literally like shiny things, although, you know, those gold edged tarot decks and beautiful Instagrammable books, and of course the shiny crystals and jewelry and things, they definitely could be part of it. But it's just anything that looks really beautiful, visually pleasing, and as though it's had a lot of thought and attention put into it, or it's just naturally gorgeous. I am a bona fide magpie. I am indeed a magpie, and so it's not escaped me that sometimes I see something and I'm just like, ooh, hello, you're very visually pleasing. You are making me feel something. I am getting a serotonin boost from looking at you. But actually, there's a lack of depth in the magpie purchases very often because they don't go deeper than that surface level, falling in love with visually what we are seeing. There is a lot of comfort, a lot of a feeling of comfort for magpie shoppers when it comes to, like, you know, obtaining the object that has that shininess to it and just feeling like, oh wow, that really makes me feel something, but then it doesn't last. Number 5 in my 6 categories of witchy overconsumer are Witchfluenced practitioners. Are you sincerely Witchfluenced? Okay, this means that you're encouraged to buy things by Witchfluencers who have a lot of stuff. They like exhibiting a lot of stuff on their social media platforms. A lot of the, you know, perfectly curated altar arrangements and massive collections of crystals. I literally saw a witch on TikTok this morning. She was surrounded by massive hunks of rock. I mean, Mother Earth was screaming. I was looking at her and I was like, no one needs that much rock that has been mined potentially unethically. I like a little bit of a crystal, but Jeezy crazy. So yeah, you get sucked in every year maybe by companies who roll out their Halloween strategies, okay? Or maybe you just go wild for that mystical aesthetic in general. If you see something that's plastered with esoteric images, you might think, oh, that's for me. I'm that. I understand that tarot card. I understand that occult design. And so obviously I need to have that decorative dish or that t-shirt or whatever the fuck it is. So it might be that as well. So you might be witchfluenced, and you might also be influenced by big businesses who have become aware of the fact that this is a very powerful industry. Witchcraft, magic, spirituality, new age, they are really plucking all of the imagery from these things and using that stuff to their advantage with no reverence really for where these things come from, although they can look very nice. So that's a problem. I've put here, is there a self-honesty that needs to happen around the fact that when something is witchcraft coded, you lose your discernment, or when a witchfluencer shows things, you lose your sense of financial strategy. You think, this is for me, it's something I should own, instead of considering whether or not you will still wish to own it in a couple of years' time. And by the way, guys, if we stop buying it, they will stop producing quite so much of it, okay? We dictate the market through what we spend our coins on, so it is definitely worth thinking about that. Number 6, are you a FOMO shopper of witchy objects? A FOMO shopper. So this is basically where a brand new deck comes out. It might have a limited run. It might have a Kickstarter. It might have a lot of fuss around it. That creates a massive sense of FOMO. You know, the desire creates the demand. There are only going to be a certain number of that deck made. I think that can be a massive area where people get into witchy FOMO shopping for sure. I've put here a hot new deck, hot new book, whatever it is. Hot new tool, hot new item comes out. You're seeing lots of walkthroughs of the deck or reviews of the book, whatever it is. And it feels like you're the last witch in the world to own this fucking thing. So you go ahead and you buy it. Even if you don't realistically get around to working with it for another year, maybe even another 2 years, it will just be taking up space, gathering dust, and actually probably creating a sense of failure and overwhelm for you every time you chance to see it out the corner of your eye on your shelves, and you think, I don't really do anything with that. That was supposed to be a thing that I got into reading or that I got into working with, and it never happened. None of these categories and none of my description of these categories is intended to shame witchy purchasing. I buy things for my practice, okay? I do. I buy things for my practice. I buy a fuckload less for my practice now than I used to, 100%. I have been over many different little hurdles of this variety, so I'm not here to shame. And I'm not here to say we shouldn't buy anything anymore, ever, at all, whatsoever. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that I think witches can operate so much more consciously in this regard. And it is easy to spend quite a while, I think, in your lifespan as a practitioner, wondering whether or not you have direction and intention, or whether or not you're falling back on consumption to give you the illusion of those things.
I'd like to see you have a little bit of direction.
I have direction.
Yeah, towards the mall.
If you have identified yourself in any of these categories, or you can think of any other categories I didn't mention that you know you've fallen into, you're already doing some really profound work for yourself as a witch, I think. You're already bringing a sense of purpose back to the center of what you're doing in your practice. And that's a really beautiful thing. And I want to say just a few things now that I hope will encourage you to be more conscious of purchases, to be gentle with yourself about anything that you feel like you might have over-purchased, and to be gentle with yourself about the potentially gigantic collections of decks or books or tools or whatever that you have, okay? This is definitely, like I said, it's not about shaming. I'm really trying to come to this from a gentle perspective, and it's something that I need to remind myself of sometimes, okay? So there's not like some judgmental thing going on here. But I really just want to say for the record that you're already, in engaging with this video, considering how the acquiring of objects for your craft, witchy objects, creates a sense of over-reliance on those things, and also maybe even passivity in your witchcraft, because you're allowing the objects to take a lot of the weight and pressure of defining your identity as a witch, rather than actually moving into action, transformation, learning, and really getting steadfastly into the depth, you know, expanding your brain and expanding your sense of what is possible in your craft. I do also think that buying objects for your craft can sometimes become a little bit of a distraction from taking action. Oh, I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. I think that sometimes we buy objects because we feel a tension around things like failing in our spellcraft, right? Not being a good enough tarot reader, feeling that we have so much more to learn, feeling that we're a little bit unsteady in certain aspects of our craft. And so it can feel comforting to kind of grab all of these things and bring them close to us and dot them around and place them on the altar. And it can feel almost like a substitute for engaging with that fear that something is going to be hard to learn, that we might fail in our spellcraft, that our rituals might go wrong or fall flat, that we might not be the caliber of witch that we always hoped we would be, and we would have to really sort of like develop ourselves in certain ways in our practice. I think buying objects is sometimes just kind of a lay-by that we park up in. And really what we want to do is get to the true destination, which is feeling that we have enriched our paths in a genuine, real and long-lasting way. So it can be a little bit of a fear-buying situation whereby it feels easier to act out the process of commitment to our path by buying things than it is to actually live the commitment to our path by experiencing things and by trying and failing and by learning and struggling to learn and by having those breakthroughs that are much more hard won than just adding something to cart, which can really feel like it's going to be a big commitment and it contributes to our seriousness as a practitioner. But actually, after all, in the end, it does not. What really contributes to our seriousness as a practitioner is getting down to the business of practice. And sometimes it can be just like a very happy distraction to acquire things, tell ourselves a story about why we need to acquire those things, and then nothing is happening over here in the development of our practice and the deepening and enriching of our experience. There can definitely be a sense of insecurity and a sense of comparison that can come up when we are too engaged with things like, you know, very aesthetic images and videos on socials and stuff like that, following a lot of witchfluencers. And believe me, I'm absolutely not ignorant of the irony of that coming out of my mouth, because I have 2 witchcraft books on the market. I am gearing up to write a 3rd and 4th. I make my living teaching witchcraft partly, and throwing cards and all of that. So I'm aware that the irony is not lost on me, guys, okay? But stay with me, walk with me here. When we realise we've been overtly witchfluenced, we can really witness how that's doing a number on us, how it's doing a number on us, and how we want to seek something that feels more meaningful and deep. And we can probably find that in a witchcraft book we already own, or a tarot deck we forgot to work with 5 years ago and have never seen again, that's right at the back of the shelf, you know? So I suppose what I'm encouraging you to do in this moment, if you're watching this video, is to have a depth experience sometime soon with an object that you already own. You know, revisit something that you read years ago that you want to read again. Crack that book that still has a perfectly smooth spine that you purchased ages ago in your local witchcraft store or online that you never got into, you know? I would say if it's my book, if it's one of my books, make it one of my books. But you know what? You guys read my books when you buy them. Like, damn, thank you for that. I've had so many beautiful reviews and so much beautiful feedback. So I know you're not leaving mine gathering dust. So I appreciate that. You can work with what you already have, and you can be creative with what you already have. And I think that creativity and that sense of being able to reimagine a spell recipe, for example, if we don't have the exact things for it, or reimagine how a tarot reading could be just as good with a deck we own and haven't seen for a while, rather than purchasing one and waiting until it arrives to do the reading. Those things can really contribute to our strength and fortitude and our development as practitioners. Trust yourself to be a strong and powerful witch without acquiring new things and without adding to your already overstuffed collections of things. Learn from your mistakes, learn from your mentors, learn from your gods and guides and ancestors, learn from the cycles and seasons of nature, learn from all of these things, rather than feeling like in order to learn more, in order to open certain doors in my mind, in order to feel how I want to feel, in order to know that I'm the witch I want to be, I need to buy something. And I think it's really sacred to witness that that might have been a trap that we fell into at certain points, or that we're falling into now, and to just really like reorient. You know, I think this video is just trying to encourage a reorient and a kind of like renewal of that deeper focus. It's not wrong to buy physical witchcraft objects. It's not wrong, but it's really about the intention and about the need and about what else is being put off and what pre-existing objects that you own are being ignored in order for you to invite this new material in, and how much of an intention and a dedication do you really have to the new things that you're bringing in, and really on a very much more practical kind of pentacles-y type of level, how much fucking room do you have for it? And how much excess income do you really want to spend on it as well? Because these things are important. Magical tools of any variety can support a thriving practice, but they can't replace a thriving practice. There is no replacement for a practice that you're actually putting your dedication and your brain power into. One of the most sort of shadow work oriented things that I've done around my relationship to the buying of witchy objects is to consider whether or not I am purchasing them to deepen my connection or to perform a version of the connection I wish to have. Yeah. And I did that a few times. Like, I'll give you an example from my own practice. I own 3 sets of runes. I don't need 3 sets of runes. I don't use runes anywhere near enough to warrant owning 3 sets of them. When I looked at the reason why I own 3 sets of runes, the first set was gifted, the other 2 I purchased. When I looked at the reason for that, it was because I was fucking scared of runes, okay? I was scared of runic wisdom. I was intimidated by the learning process. It's very, very different to tarot, which I mastered many years ago. Of course, I will always consider myself to be still learning tarot because it's gargantuan and abyssal. And I would be ignorant to think that I won't always be a pupil of it. But I'm incredibly proficient. I've been a pro reader for years, over a decade. So runes were scary. They scared me. And I was scared of deepening into my relationship with my matron, who is a Norse goddess. And there was a lots of fears. I was fearful. I was fearful that I wouldn't get the caliber of answer that I needed, that I wouldn't be able to dig deep enough to really bring up the wisdom and tie it to my personal gnosis, that I would discover that I don't love runes as much as I wanted to. And so that was kind of something that I realized is like, hey, you know what? You don't need any more sets of runes, bitch. You need to crack open the 2 rune books you bought that have just been sat there gathering dust and like learn to read runes. Learn to read runes. Stop buying runes and start reading runes, honey. It's okay. It's going to be okay.
Will you do me a favor? Can you get the guys to help you move the piano out of the way? They're coming to get it tomorrow because some people don't play. I will. Yeah, when? It's been gathering dust here for 3 months.
Our spiritual lives demand our engagement, not our consumption. They have never demanded our consumption. Never, not one time. I know that I have a massive amount of journal heads in my audience, people that will grab their journal or grab some loose leaf paper and write down their responses to things in order to dive deeper and know more. So I'm going to give you some exercises at the end of this video, okay? I'm going to give you some exercises right now that will help you. Right, so first of all, I want to encourage you to choose an object that you've already purchased. You already own this physical object. It's in your home, right? But you never engage with it, okay? Or you've touched it once or twice, but you've not really dived deeply into it. So it's a book that you haven't read. It's a deck that you haven't used, right? Whatever it might be. Grab your journal and ask yourself these questions. Why did I buy this object in the first place? And what were my thoughts and emotions at the time of the purchase? What were the underlying or subconscious reasons for me to make this purchase? And that will be the reasons that you didn't see at the time. Okay, so you're really sort of diving a level deeper here. You're getting into the cavern, the underwater cavern here. Next question, why did this object really come into my life and what does it really have to teach me? And don't be afraid to do a little bit of psychometry on the object if you want to. Speak to the object, let the object talk back to you. Put the book or the deck or whatever it is between your hands, put it on your lap and just say, why are you here? What have you got for me? What are we supposed to be doing together? You know, encourage me, entice me to learn with you. So read the energy signature between yourself and the object and begin to create that bond. Next question, whereabouts am I holding on to some fear or reluctance to working with this object? Okay, do exactly what I did with my realization about why I own 3 sets of runes. And then the final question, how can I progress forward positively with this object now? What will be my commitment to this object? What will be my vow? Will it be that I will just read the first chapter today or do a quick 3-card reading today or open up this sort of witchy tool and figure out how it works? Maybe read some things from other witches about how they use theirs? Or am I really going to do a deep dive? Am I going to commit to reading this cover to cover or only working with this deck for a whole month, right? So make some kind of commitment. And here is another set of journal prompts for those of you who know that you currently have a strong desire to buy things for your practice. You might know what those things are, or you might just feel like shopping on some of your favorite sites or going to your local witchy store and just browsing. Okay, here are your questions. Do I already have something similar to the type of thing that I think I want, right? Or that I'm looking at right now on Etsy? Am I currently in the kind of mood that usually causes me to overconsume or consume without full consciousness? So we're really looking there at kind of like, what witchy shopper categories do you know that you're in? And are you in one of those moods right now? Are you in a slump? Are you getting FOMO? Are you wanting a dopamine hit, right? You go through the categories and you think, is that where I am right now? And is that really why I want to buy this thing? Can I put my desire for this object on ice by waiting a month and then seeing if I still want it? And if there isn't a specific object in mind, but you just feel like you're in danger of being about to buy something, then I would say, can you put your desire to visit a certain website on hold, or a certain, if you want to go to the witchy store, like I have a great witchy store in my local town, amazing selection of vintage witchcraft books and magazines and almanacs and decks and crystals and all sorts, right? So for me, if I knew I wanted to go into the witchy shop, which by the way, I walked clean past it on the last 4 or 5 occasions. I was like, no witchy store for me today. I know I'm going to buy something and I don't actually need anything. I want to go into the witchcraft store because of need, largely because I need a new oil or new incense or whatever, right? But if you know you just want to go to the local shop, it can just kind of be like, can I put my desire to go in there on ice? Can I decide I don't need to do that for a month and then see how I feel? Next question, can I see my desire for this new witchy object as a sign that I'm craving more engagement with my witchcraft? Engagement, not consumerism. And if so, how can I engage with my practice right now without buying a fucking thing. Darlings, the most powerful tool you will ever own in your craft is not something you can buy. They don't have it anywhere, not even on Etsy, okay? Not even in your favorite witchcraft shop online or in your local area. They don't have it. They don't stock it, okay? You can't buy it. It is your willingness to engage with your path from a place of courage, curiosity, and pure desire, pure will to get better, to know more, to strengthen your path, to go deeper, and to realize things that you could never realize from any price tagged object. During my time as a witchfluencer myself, I can't stand the idea of myself as a witchfluencer, and I really, really hope that my work goes a lot deeper and does a lot more for you than that. But during my time as someone who is a professional witch who has books about witchcraft, I have been asked to take receipt of many different kinds of witch boxes, you know, those monthly witch boxes that you can get. Where you get like a crystal and a deck and a whatever and this and that, and it's like a bunch of objects, maybe chimes, maybe whatever it is. I've been asked to take them, to review them, you know, to give you guys a discount code on them. I've always said no. You might notice that the vast majority of the time, if I take a sponsorship, it's going to be an experience sponsorship. So it's not anything that comes in the post. It's something where you're learning, you're getting meditations, you're getting classes, something like that, because I really do believe that that is very enriching, and I know that my audience are interested in getting a discount on that stuff. But when it comes to physical objects, I very, very, very rarely review decks, very rarely review decks. And I do not show you things like witch boxes or advertise witchy stores. I've been asked to do that, but I don't, because I don't want to contribute to the problems that I know that so many witches have, where they feel put upon to buy things for whatever set of reasons is true for them. When you buy learning experiences, they enrich your brain, but they do not clutter up your home. You know, you don't have to make decisions a few years down the line about where this object is going to go, and is it something that I can sell or donate, or is it essentially going to go into landfill? You know, we don't have to make those kinds of decisions. We don't have to worry about those kinds of things. And I think whenever we buy physical objects, it should be with this really sincere desire to use them, to know that we are absolutely ready to use them and we're going to get the maximum out of using them. It's been very interesting to open this conversation with you guys, so thank you, and I will really look forward to devouring the comments beneath this one. I'm also going to leave some articles down below for you that you might be interested in reading about witchcraft and consumerism and the business of witchcraft, and how capitalism has got its slimy little hooks into witchcraft stuff, and really begun to realize the power of the pentacle as opposed to the pound, the power of the pentacle, you know, and really wanting to grab our attention and get us to buy things, and the feeling that we need to get into this mystical aesthetic, or we need the next thing, or this or that thing. So I'm going to leave a few different articles down below that I was devouring last night that you might also be interested in reading if you want to think more about this, and if you want to think more about how you might be influenced to overconsume for your witchcraft in ways that are not necessary. As always, my darlings, you know where to find me. You can find my website down below and the link to my Patreon down below. Thank you so much, Skillshare, for sponsoring this video. I'll be back with more for you soon. Blessed be, much love as always, my darlings. Mwah.